These are the songs, songs from my albums. I don't know if you've been listening to these albums. But okay, so rule number 1, magic. That one doesn't really have like a crazy good story, which is not a great start. But basically, what happened with that is I moved over to Vancouver, and I was living in this really shitty apartment. And while I was there in this really terrible apartment, oh my God, my room was filled with spiders. So I hate spiders. Okay, so here's the thing. When I was a kid, there was this kid, oh my God, you guys. For those who were here for the story time that happened yesterday, Mike, the guy who ratted on me, was the same guy that pushed my face into a spider web that was filled with hundreds of baby spiders. Okay, so I was looking at this spider web, and there was a big old spider that was right in the middle of it, and it was giving birth to baby spiders. And I was looking at that thing, and my head was really close because I was super curious about how this all worked. And he pushed my face into the spider web, and there was tiny spiders crawling over me. I was probably 5, maybe 4 years old. I ran into my house. I had spiders everywhere crawling in my shirt. I remember that. I jumped in the shower. I washed myself, and I remember watching the baby spiders just go off of me. Right. So that's a side story. And what happened is now I'm living in this apartment in Vancouver, or basement suite in Vancouver. And there is so many spiders in this room. And, I'm killing spiders before I go to bed. I'm killing spiders when I wake up. I also get bitten by spiders throughout the night and wake up to that. It was awful. There was so many. I was just living on a nest, right? But anyways, that experience in Vancouver was not the best. I really didn't like where I was living in Vancouver. I wasn't making any money. I was busking, and I would go out busking, and I would make 25 cents. It was bad. I was having a really rough time living there. But what would happen is I would go back. I would have my cello with me, and I would have my loop pedal, and when I would play music, I felt all right. Even if the world around me was going to shit, I always felt really, really happy whenever I played music. And so that's how magic came to be. Is I was sitting in that room where it was such a terrible, terrible situation, but I was playing that riff and I just felt amazing. And so it's just like, there's magic in this room. I don't know if you can feel it, but there's magic in this room. And the magic is the music, right? The music is like this amazing therapy that just brings me out of this dark place and puts me into a solid thing. So that's what magic was written about. Yeah. So Moonlight. What happened with Moonlight is I ended up dating this girl in college who played amazing piano, and I fell in love with her immediately. She was quite an amazing lady, and we dated for 6 months before we held hands, and what ended up happening with her is that when Christmas came around, I ended up we ended up. I didn't want to say broke into her room. It was like she opened up the window for me, and I came in on Christmas, and we spent the night together. And we hadn't held hands in 6 months, and things happened, and then she felt so guilty about that experience that she told her dad, and her dad is a pastor. And what happened with her dad is that after she told her dad that we had these romantic experiences together, I was her first boyfriend. He came to my house and he threatened to break all of my fingers if I ever talked to her again. So I left her alone. Under her father's request, I stopped talking to her, and I had so much love for this girl. And so I ended up writing Moonlight because I could still see her. I went to school with her. I still saw her in the hallways, but I just couldn't talk to her. And so it was like looking at such a far distance, right? And so Moonlight, what that's about is it's about a astronaut that's up on this spaceship that's looking down on the Earth and just wants to talk to the person that they love, but they're not able to. And that's what Moonlight was written about, and that's how that came to be. Paperwork was when me and my buddy Cody, we played music together for a really long time, made so much music together, had so much fun, had so many great experiences together. Me and him went to Banff, and when we were in Banff, we wanted to go busking, and we took our instruments to the busking office, to City Hall, and we said, hey, we would like to play music on the streets. Please give us a busking license. And the guy said, I'm sorry, it's not during the busking season, so you can't have a license. And so what I said is, like, can we instead of playing for music, or sorry, playing for money, instead of playing for money, can we just keep our cases closed and just play music out on the street? Is that okay with you guys? Like, we came all the way here. We came all the way to Banff. It's not during the busking season, but we would still like to play music. Can we just go and make people happy on the street and not ask for money? And they were just like, no. And we were like, oh, okay, great. So, like, what are we going to do here, you know? And they didn't have a solution for us. And so we went back to our hotel room, and we were just like, that is ridiculous. That is ridiculous that we can't just go out with instruments and just make people happy, you know, and just go out onto the street and just play and just be happy, you know, and that is the world. Yeah, that's the world for you, right? So we were sitting in our hotel rooms going like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And we got out a notebook and we wrote paperwork. And you know, you've buried yourself in paperwork instead of planting trees. And we walked in and we went back to that office. And we saw the people that were there, and we were just like, hey, do you mind if we play you a quick song? And they were just like, sure. And we grabbed the guitars, and we played them that song, and then we left. And then we went over a city next to us in Kamloops, and they were glad to give us a busking license, and we played there, and it was great. And we had so much fun, and people really responded well to it, and we had people that were like biking by that like ended up sitting with us for like 2 hours, just like being this like I remember this was one lady that was driving by on a bike, and she saw us playing music, and she came to us and she was just like, I had just had a really bad fight with my husband and I needed to get out of the house. And I said, well, join us, you know, like sit with us and just be here. And me and Cody played music for her for a couple hours with these two other girls that we had met. And she was just like this is exactly what I needed. And you know, it's a therapy, right? Like it's an amazing therapy, and especially if you can speak to that other person. And I don't know, she had a huge emotional reaction, that lady that was on the bike, to the music that we were doing. Okay. So Fish in a Birdcage is an interesting one. You might have heard the story before, but what ended up happening is I moved to Victoria, and from Red Deer. And when I moved over to Victoria, what ended up happening is the first place that I was living in, she had okay, so I found a place to rent. It was $700. I promise this will all make sense, but okay, so it was $700 for the room, and then it was another $200 that I gave her so that she could keep the kitchen full. That's what she was saying. She was just like, if you give me an extra $200 on top of the $700 of rent, I will make sure that the kitchen is full of food, and I will even cook you breakfast, because I'm going to be making breakfast for myself, so I'll make you food. I gave her $900, most of my money. I had just gotten a job, so I was like, I'll make this back. I gave her $900, and then what ended up happening is 3 days later, I was covered in bedbug bites. From my arms were covered in bedbug bites. Like the first night that I got bit by these bedbugs, I was thinking, I'm having an allergic reaction to these bed sheets, right? But it was, yeah. And then so I was like, I'm having an allergic reaction to these bed sheets. But what ended up happening is it wasn't an allergic reaction. It was bed bugs. And 3 days later, I was covered in it. You know, my face had a bunch of like the bites on it, and just like, it was just all over me. And so I went back to the lady and I was like, listen, I need my money back. I need to go. I can't live here. And the lady was just like, I'm not going to give you back your money because of the stress that you're causing me by telling me that I have bed bugs in my place. And I was like, this is hopeless. This is a hopeless situation, and you're not worth my time. And so I went out and I went out and bought myself a tent. And I asked one of my friends who I knew had a backyard. I was like, "Can I come and sleep in your backyard?" And she was just like, "Yeah, you can do that." So I came with what little money I had left, and I went to go sleep in her backyard with this amazing pop out tent. And I had enough room for me and the cello, and I was sleeping next to the cello. And the tent was amazing. It had like this really clear view of the stars, and I remember sleeping under this plum tree, and throughout the night I would get shooken awake because my tent would all of a sudden go shh, and I'd be like, "Whoa, what was that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's just a plum," and fall back to sleep. And I'd wake up in the morning and have free breakfast because of these plums that would fall next to my tent. And so so what ended up happening here is while I was living in this tent, I did not feel like I belonged in this new city. I had just moved from the place that I grew up in, and I moved into a new city, and the first place I start living is in a tent, and I feel really out of my element. I feel really uncomfortable with my environment, and I feel like I'm just kind of like, what am I doing with my life here? What am I doing with my life, right? And I have my cello, and I'm working on this riff, which is the Fish in a Birdcage riff, and I'm singing along to it one day when I'm like, I have my riff on my phone and I'm singing along to it, and then at one point I'm just like kind of like spitballing words out and seeing what happens with it. And one of the words that I spitballed out was, "I'm a fish in a birdcage." It just came out of me, and I don't know where from. And as soon as I said it, I stopped my recording, and then I was like, "What did I just say? What was that?" And then I thought about it, and I was like, "Fish in a birdcage? What a stupid idea!" And then I kept walking. And the thing that had just happened is that a seed had planted, and it wouldn't leave. The seed would not leave my head. As soon as that fish in a birdcage image was there, it just started to grow and grow and grow. While I was living in this tent, I was living in the tent while this was happening, right? And this little seed was growing, and I was feeling like I have this cage around me, which was this tent, right? And I don't feel like I'm in an environment where I belong. And I started to relate more and more to this idea, right? And then I started to relate to it more and more as I moved along as an artist, where I was just like, well, I have these cages of like having to sell my music. I don't want to sell my music. That's another cage that's on top of my environment, right? Okay, so and it's been interesting too to run along people in the way where it's just like I'm bumping into people and they're just like, "Man, I got to tell you, I really relate with your fish in a birdcage because I have a mental illness." Or something like that, right? I run into people that tell me that like they relate to the image because they have their own cages that they're working through, and they really need, and I don't know, they just resonated with it. I've got these two birds that are on my chest. One is a woodpecker, and one is a mockingbird. And the imagery behind the woodpecker and the mockingbird, it's connected to the fish in a birdcage that's on my arm. I have that tattooed on my arm, and that's connected. And the imagery of the mockingbird symbolizes getting out of your comfort zone, and the woodpecker is to symbolize beating to your own drum. So what I found is that, in order for me to escape my cage, I had to get out of my comfort zone and beat to my own drum. And that was through busking, right? That was through taking my instrument out, getting out of my comfort zone, being in front of people, and just letting it rip. Right. And that was the way that I found of getting out of at least one of my cages. You know what I mean? Okay. So let's keep going. That was Fish in a Birdcage. James Picard was I'm sure like lots of you have heard the story of James Picard. But James Picard, what basically happened with him is when he was a kid, his dad was this abusive alcoholic. He took his art, he threw it in the fire in front of James. He would also, he was a really bad parent, is what I know about this guy. And that when he told James, he's like, "You're not going to be an artist," that lit the fuel underneath James, and he took that fuel and he harnessed it, and he became this amazing artist. And he just has this unlimited fire that's burning all the time. And when I met James Picard, at at a show. There was a lady that was playing cello, and we had connected online, and she saw that I was in the room, and she was just like, "Would you like to come up and play a song?" And I came up and I played a song with her. And then afterwards, I'm talking with the people that are in this room, and this man walks up to me, and he's not a tall man. But the crazy thing about this man is that even though he wasn't, I don't even think he was as tall as me. But like the thing is that when he walked up to me, his presence, the presence of this man was like standing next to a tower. It was an experience that I had never had before. It was like I was standing next to a mountain, and I was looking into this guy's eyes, and I was like, this guy is different. I don't know who this guy is, but I need to know who he is. You know, it was just something that was in his eyes that I was like picking up on, and I was like, I need to know who you are. I didn't like we didn't even speak, but like it was just like kind of one of those things that was like right away that I knew that this man was something different. And James Picard and I connected over Facebook, and then he just started posting, and just image after image that he was posting was just masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. And then when I started doing my first album artwork, I was already hooked. I was hooked on his work, and I was like, James, you have to be the one that does the album artwork. You have to. And he was like, it's going to be expensive, and it's going to take a really long time. And I was like, I don't care. It has to be you. And James Picard took 6 months to draw the Fish in a Birdcage album artwork, which is right over there on the bottom of your screen. And you know, I was expecting a $4,000 bill, but he came to me and he was like, "Listen, I'm gonna give you this for $300. I like what you're doing." And I was like, amazing. So I gave him $300. He even sent me the original sketch, which means a lot to me. I have that sketch and it's in my room. And then he came to me a few years later, and he said, "Hey, I'm making this movie, and I would like to see if you want to write something for it." And so that inspired the second album, where I was like, okay, I need to make something for James, because he inspires me all the time, and I need to make something for him. And I loved his work, love his work so much that I watched countless interviews and really studied his life for about a week, and then just tried to, and then that's when, you know, I wrote that song and rewrote that song and rewrote that song and rewrote that song. And then when I finally figured it out, where I was just like, this is it. This is a condensed version of what I've been trying to say about James. Then I went out onto the street in Victoria, and I played that song over and over and over again for hours, and just busking. And I made $80 just playing the same song over and over and over again in the same spot. People that were walking by was like, "Whoa, that's really cool." So so that's how James Picard came to be. Rule number 6, which is okay, I should probably mention that James Picard, he made a movie, right? The Dark and the Wounded. And The Dark and the Wounded, what that is about is it's about his art that he's made. That's the twisted side of humanity, right? Because he's got such a dark past, and he takes that darkness, and he even like brings in other people's stories that they can't tell themselves, and he puts that into art. And that was a big inspiration for me, where I felt like I need to do that, where I need to find these stories that haven't been told yet and bring them into the artistic realm of people that are not able to tell their stories, and try to tell that story. You know, like I think I'm constantly striving to try and do that. I think James is really, really good at it. So The Dark and the Wounded is a documentary. And I'll mention this too. So what ended up happening is he tried to get his artwork into art buildings. And when he went to these places, he showed them his work, and they were just like, "This is really twisted stuff, and we're not going to hang your art here." And James just didn't really feel like it was a good fit either for his stuff, because there was like these crazy, like lunatic looking clowns, and like a ghost like on a sheet, and like it's really crazy twisted stuff. And what ended up happening with James is he was working on a movie in Vancouver, and they were in an abandoned insane asylum, Riverview, and he was looking around and he was going, "This is such an amazing building, and I want my art in here." And he went to the people that ran it and he was like, "Can I do an art show there?" And they said no. And he said, "Great. Who can use this building?" And they said, "People that are making a movie." And so what he did is that he sat down and he wrote a fake script, you guys. He wrote a fake script for a fake movie, and then he hired a film crew. And then what he did is he booked Riverview for this fake movie, right? And then he hung all of the art around there because, you know, he needed his props for his movie. And then everyone that came as a guest for his art show wasn't listed as a guest, but they were listed as an extra. And all of these extras that came in, and he had like these people in like hospital garbs that were walking around in this abandoned insane asylum, and it was really, really amazing. Like I got to see that art show, and I could not be happier that I saw that. It was really incredible. And you know, spooky music while it's going on, and you're walking around this place looking at all his art and just getting encapsulated by every single image. It was there's no words to describe what happened there. But what ended up happening is there was a film crew that was there that he had hired, this film crew. He had hired a film crew. So they were going around and they were recording stuff with their camera. And when he started looking at the footage of what this film crew had made, he was going, "Screw this being a fake movie. This needs to be a real movie," because they were filming people how they were having reactions, like emotional experiences with this like thing. Like one of the stories that I remember very clearly was this man that walked up to an art piece, and he broke down crying for a very long time. And you know, James didn't disturb him. And about 40 minutes later, James was walking by, and this man came up and gave James this big hug. And he was like, "I need to tell you what just happened for me." And he said that what happened is that when I'm looking at this image, who I'm seeing is my mother. And she's passed away. But I feel like this has like when I came out to my mother, we actually had a falling out. But I know that when I'm looking at this photo, that like things have been forgiven, and like it's a really I can't do that story justice, but I know, you know, these are the kind of the emotional reactions that people were having to his art, and it was caught on film. So he took that and he made it into a documentary, and then he put it into film festivals, and it won just a ton of film festivals because it's just the most unique movie, you know. And my song is right as soon as the end credits hit. That's when the song James Picard comes in. And it's not available to watch because what ended up happening is as soon as it won all these awards, then Sony and Lionsgate had a bidding war on it, and then one of them won it, and now they're turning it into a full-length TV series. But James had a cut on his hand, which turned into this crazy thing that's held him back a lot, and it's really pushed the schedule back. But like, I'm really looking forward to like when that all gets, you know, sorted out and released, because it's going to be unbelievable. Okay, so that's the story of James Picard. Let's go to rule number 6. Rule number 6 is because there's a bunch of rules that we had in our studio, and they were called the calm and collected rules of the studio. And so, you know, I'm leaving my house this was fairly frequently. When I was leaving my house, my mom would always go, "Dustin, what's rule number 1?" And I'd have to go, "Safety." And she would go, "Yeah, you know, it's safety, right?" And I would be hanging around with my friends, and I'd get a phone call from my mom, and I'd be hanging around with these friends, and they would just be like, "Dustin, what's rule number 1?" And I'd have to go, "Safety," right? And what ended up happening is that we were in the studio, and someone let out a huge belch in front of a girl, and Cody was just like to Zach, he was just like, "Dude, that wasn't classy. You shouldn't burp in front of the ladies like that, especially not in the studio. That should be a rule," right? And so rule number 2 became no burping in front of the ladies. Brackets, it's not classy, right? And then like and then we just started coming up with these random rules that all of a sudden happened for the studio, where we're just like, rule number 9 is there are no rules, and rule number 10 is you are the master of your own destiny, and rule number 11 is you are the master of your own universe. Oh, what is it? Rule number 7 is whatever floats your boat, but don't sink the raft. There was dude. Yeah. Okay. So there was some funny ones that I'm not going to mention here. But rule number 37, where's the horse? That one's important. Rule number 12 is where's an instrument? You're sitting on one, which is in reference to a cajon. So there was these rules that started to develop, and they were pretty intricate, and they were really silly. What's that? A cajon is an instrument. It's like a box drum that you play. What's rule number 37? Rule number 37 is where's the horse? Because where is it? Right? And so these rules are absolutely ridiculous. And what ended up happening is when I started making my first album, I was just like, maybe I should have the rules as the list of songs. And rule number 6 happened within that time. Rule number 6 was just like written because it's just like, what's rule number 6? It's fuck it either way, right? Well, it was either way, fuck it at first. And then I wrote that into a song, which, I had to change it around so that the lyrics worked. And so, okay. And then, so, these rules, I was looking at them while we were recording the first one, and I was thinking, okay, so we got rule number 1 is safety, right? And that's going to be what? Moonlight, magic, right? Rule number 1, safety, is magic. Rule number 2 is no burping in front of the ladies. That's Moonlight. Like, come on. Like, that really doesn't work. So I was just like, okay, I'll just put rule, and then I'll just put the name of the song, right? And that'll be kind of cool because that'll like connect all of the albums somehow. And then I was just like, brilliant. Like that's actually I really liked that idea. So I just started doing that right off the bat. Okay, so rule number 6, what happened the day that happened was I was working at Volkswagen as a service advisor. Now, so what that is I am the intermediary. Oh, I'm saying this wrong. I am like the middle between the mechanic and the customer, right? That's my job. Now, what had happened that day is there was a younger woman that had came in with her Volkswagen for the 3rd time. The first time she put $8,000 into this starting issue. The car wouldn't start. She put $8,000 into it, right? She takes the car home. She brings it back 2 days later. It's not working again. So another $6,000 worth of work goes into this car, right? She goes home with the car. She comes back. It's the 3rd time. She needs it looked at again. There's another $5,000 that goes into this car. They were really determined to fix it up. They put another $5,000 into the car. And then at the end of it all, a mechanic was fired. And she was left with a lemon. Like they were just like, we can't get it to work. It's done. It's totally done. And so I had to be the one that tell her that there's no warranty on this car. And it's a lemon, and it's just like, yeah. So I was the one who had to tell her that day that she just spent $21,000 or something like that on this car, and it's still not gonna work. Yeah. So that was hard. And right after I told her that, I was upstairs and I had my guitar in the break room, and I had an hour for lunch, and I sat there with my guitar, and I was just like, fuck this, and I was like, fuck it either way. I don't care. I don't give a shit. And that's how that song came to be, like, rule number 6 is fuck it either way. I mean, I could even look at hold on. I'm just going to look at the lyrics and see if there's anything that's kind of even relatively. Oh, I guess is rule number 6 in here? One sec. I guess I skipped rule number 6 in the lyrics. Right, because it's on the unrecorded section of things. Okay, let's just keep going through the list. So that's the kind of the story of how rule number 6 came to be. Rule number 7, Angel Tango. This one was an interesting one where I used to go to open mics. I used to go to open mics a lot. And I always had this feeling or this so I went to open mics a lot in hopes that someday I might run into someone that was doing the same thing as me but in a female body, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I was just like, I was hoping that I would be at an open mic and find someone that was this dedicated to the craft that I was putting into my life, right? I was just hoping to find my partner, right? I was hoping to find my other half, and at these open mics, and I went to so many open mics, and it's not because of that in particular, but I was hoping that one day that just might happen, and I had this image in my head of like what that might look like, where there's a girl that comes up onto the stage that she's got like the crazy hair, hence the crazy hair, right? And she steps onto the stage and she's got a guitar or ukulele or whatever she's playing, and she walks up there, and then just in maybe she's really shy, and maybe she's not looking at the room, and maybe she's looking down, and she plays her heart out, and she plays something that really means something to her, and when that happens, my heart. And this has happened so many times with me as far as musicians, where I watch musicians play and I just instantly fall in love with that person, right? Like when they're opening up their heart and their experience and their emotions, and when they can do it so openly, that's like, I've fallen in love with so many musicians, guys and girls alike, just like, oh my God, I love you and I love what you're doing, and I can't get enough of what your heart has to say. And so the idea in Angel Tango is that this girl comes up and she sits on the stage and she's playing her music and she's looking down and she gives her heart out to the microphone, and I fall in love with her, and that's it. That's what that story is about. I know it's happened for me. It's happened for friends. Okay, so let's do Otherside. Otherside is about. And I was talking about Otherside the other stream, where it was just like, for me, Otherside is about finding a teacher or a coach or someone who has the skills that you're looking for to bring you over to that other side, to where they are, right? And so for me, that person was Natalie Haas. That's what inspired Otherside. She was this person that I ended up really gravitating towards, and she had all of these skills that I really wanted, right? Like she was like this I don't want to say idol, right? But she was this person that was able to, and awkward hugging for sure. Yeah, for the people who heard that story, the first time I met her, there was an extremely awkward one-sided hug. Because I had been spending hours and hours a day learning from her online digitally. And then when I finally got to meet her, I gave her this super awkward one-sided hug. And it lasted a good little while. She was like, okay, you can stop now. She was so nice about it. But now we give each other real hugs because she actually knows who I am. And so Otherside had her in mind as kind of an inspiration for like, where those lyrics come from. Okay, so Child of the Stars. Oh, I'm just trying to think back. Where did Child of the Stars come from? I think it was just a day where I was just sitting there thinking, like, what would it look like if I was a father, right? What would life look like if I was actually thinking about there was this ex-girlfriend that we had a pregnancy scare at one point. I don't want to call it a scare because it wasn't like, it scared me at first, but then I was just like, okay, let's do it. If we're having a kid, we're having a kid, right? Let's if we're having a kid, then I'll get down on one knee and I'll give you the ring. Like, let's do it, right? Like, if you are pregnant, like, all the way. What ended up happening is she wasn't pregnant, ended up not being pregnant, and so it was kind of like a thing where I was sitting to myself just being like, what would have happened there? What would have my life have looked like, right? What would my life look like with a child, and what would I want to say to that child? And that's how Child of the Stars came to be, right? It's this letter that's written to an unborn child, hasn't came into the world yet. Roots. I did talk about roots when I was on that walk with Poco, but kind of let's kind of do like a condensed version of it. So imagine that your mind is like a mountain, but when you're small, it's a small mountain, and there's a lot of water that's coming out the top and it's flowing down the sides, right? Now try to link the mountain with your mind. And when you are a small baby, you have this small mountain of a mind. And the water that's pouring up from the top is all the information that you're getting from being around in the world, and you're absorbing things like a sponge, and there's all of this information that's trickling down the small mountain. Now, as you get older, this mountain continues to grow, right? And as it grows, the water, the channels of water start to become more. They dig themselves canals, right? They dig themselves streams, right? And water goes down the path of least resistance, right? So we develop these patterns of thought over the course of our life, and we reinforce those patterns of thought as we move our way through life. Now, when it comes to the psychedelic drugs that I've taken, I mean, I had a phase, right? I'm okay, like things. I love how I turned out. I love the experiences that I had. And with the psychedelic drugs, I feel like what it does is it puts a block in front of those streams, right? Those streams that are happening, that are coming out of coming out of this mountain. All of a sudden, there's like a dam that happens there, and it changes how your mind is working. So those channels of water have to find other streams to go down. Right, and when that happens, when it tries to find other streams, it might use channels that you haven't used since you were a really small child, and that's what the idea of roots is that it's just an experience of looking at your mind and how those connections are how neurons connect in this kind of roots like system. And that's the connection to the song, is that the mind is the roots, right? So we're going with My Dream, My Addiction. So My Dream, My Addiction is okay. So this one is related to drugs because when I was traveling across Canada, I was in a van. Like, don't do drugs, kids. But maybe when you're older. Maybe when it's supervised. I don't know. Anyways, I'm in this van and we're traveling across Canada, and I happen to have some MDMA on me, and I found that it really helps me write songs at certain times in my life. So I'm in this van, and I think I'm going to be in this van for 8 hours. I might as well take a little bit of MDMA, and then I'll have like a songbook in front of me, and I'll write so many lyrics. And I took the MDMA, and I took too much. First of all, I probably took too much. I didn't know how much I was taking, really. And then I'm in the van, and we are going, and we hit tornado weather. Just this crazy, crazy weather that just, there's a tornado that's close by. We didn't see it touch down like in the other tornado story that I have. But this one, like, there was hail and crazy wind, and it was just like, I felt so trapped in that van. It was just not a good idea. Brad didn't know that I was on MDMA, but I was very, oh man, I felt squeezed. I felt squeezed and just wrung, right? And then when I got back when we came into Montreal, I went and I saw Muse, and then the day after I saw Muse, I came back to the apartment, and I was so inspired. Plus, I was sober at this point, and I soberly wrote about that experience that I had in that van, and that's what MDMA, or My Dream, My Addiction, is about. It's about that squeeze, you know? And I feel like the instrumental part of that, I feel like that's like the thunder, and that's the turmoil of the, like, without the lyrics. I feel like that's the clouds, that's the wind, that's all of the elements that are crashing into this scene, right? Through the Tides is about when I was sitting on a patch of grass, and I was overlooking the ocean, and I saw this boat go by slowly, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day. And I was actually sitting beside a place called the Whale Wall. There was a wall that was beside me, and it had a really big, giant picture of a whale on there, a big graffiti art thing of a whale, like a really well drawn whale. But it had chips falling off of it because it had been so long since someone had painted that, probably 10 years or something. But it was called the Whale Wall in Victoria. If you're ever in Victoria, you can go to the Whale Wall. So I'm sitting next to the Whale Wall, and I'm looking out on this boat, and it's going by. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, what it must be like to be a fisherman, where you're giving your life each day to this vessel, right? Where this boat is holding your existence, right? It's holding your life, and you are putting you're putting your trust and your very being, right? You're taking everything that you are, and you're giving it to that boat, and you're hoping that brings you back safe, right? And that's what the song is about. It's just like, as a boat, right? It showed its heart to so many men that I'll never see again, just for this moment, just for this day, just for this moment, right? Where it's personified as a woman. But, because a lot of sailors like to call their vessels, like a girl or whatever. They do that with cars and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the idea of how that worked. Plus, I was sitting next to this whale wall, so I had that inspiration where I was just like, maybe the boat could be a whale. Maybe that's how that happened. Don't tell the woman that it's about a boat. I know, right? I try to keep what it's about hidden until they've heard the song at least once, because I really do feel like there's a lot of people that connect with that imagery. And I've had some really, really interesting experiences with that song where I'm playing it right in the same room, and I have women just break down crying in front of me, and they're having an emotional reaction to it, right? They're having this emotional thing where I've tapped into something that I did not think that I was going to tap into when I was writing that song, but it happened, right? And I think that's really beautiful. I think it's really cool when that can happen, where an artist can reach out and touch another's soul, so you don't feel so alone. Maybe. Okay, so Waterfall. It makes me think of so back in my childhood there was a place that I used to go to called Discovery Canyon. And Discovery Canyon was a really, really cool place where there was these rubber tubes, and I would go down there with this other family that was friends of our family called I'm trying to read the chat here for a second. Okay, never mind. So I go to Discovery Canyon, and we used to go there with another family that was friends of our family, and we would get these rubber tubes, and we would go down, but what was really cool is right at the start of this stream, or whatever you want to call it, like miniature rapids or whatever, right? Right at the front of that, there was this waterfall. And what was really cool is you could walk right up to the waterfall, and then when you built up enough courage, you could run through the waterfall. And it was just, it's so heavy. The water was so heavy as you were going through the waterfall, and you'd get to the other side and you'd flip around, and like there wasn't a lot of space, but you could be behind the waterfall and you could just watch it just rush by. And so when I was writing Waterfall, that's the place that my mind took me to, where I was looking from behind a waterfall, where it was like it would be amazing to be in that place with someone that you loved, and and um experience the echoing of the water, and experience the the that atmosphere is really cool, and I feel like it's not an event that happened, but it's an event that I could imagine seeing myself going to someday with the person that I end up being with at some point. So we'll go with Fiddler's Heart. So this one's rule number 14, and Fiddler's Heart. What ended up happening with that is I played with a fiddler by the name of Max Shields for years, and he was he's a monster of a violinist, and he is the reason why I can play cello as good as I can, because he really challenged me. He challenged me every day that I played with him, because he was such a better musician than me, and every day that I played with him, he made me go hard, and he challenged the shit out of me. But the bonus, I don't want to say bonus, the thing that happened through that experience was that we got to see magic, real magic that happened every single day, and he was the fire of that magic. He was the fuel for that magic to happen, where he just encapsulated everyone around him. Right? He just had this ability to have so many people stop in their tracks and be like, this is incredible. And for me to be a part of that was unbelievable. And so Fiddler's Heart is about how this man was connected with so many souls. Right? He's this traveling gypsy, and he's just got this happy-go-lucky kind of attitude about him, and he's just like everyone that he's just this positive light when you're looking at him as a performer. Yeah, he really inspired me. So that's where Fiddler's Heart came from. And man, we had people dancing around our music. We had just so much joy and love, and yeah, Fiddler's Heart is something that really means a lot. But that was a section of my life that came and then it left. So four aces is about my grandfather, my great grandfather, because my great grandfather Jack, I never knew my grandfather Jack, but I knew that he worked on the railroads when he came to this country from Ukraine. He came from Ukraine. There was a point in time where he's going down the river with his wife Mary, which is my great grandmother, and they're getting shot at in the water. Like, that happened, right? And what ended up happening is they made it to Canada on a boat, and they started their new life, and he started working on the railroad tracks. And I didn't know that much about him. I just didn't know about Grandpa Jack. But I knew that he worked on these railroads. And so I was sitting there trying to imagine what Grandpa Jack's life might have looked like. And then all of a sudden I find myself in this weird place where I am in a Western-like saloon. And I'm watching Grandpa Jack, and he's got these cards in front of him. And and my grandma Mary is behind, or great grandmother Mary is behind him. And what ends up happening is he's playing cards, and they're playing poker, and they've got a lot of money in the middle of the table, right? And this guy, he throws down my four aces beats his straight. So he's got a straight, right? He's got a straight. He puts down the straight. And then my Grandpa Jack puts down four of a kind for aces, and that beats his straight just by one up. And this guy stands up, and he takes out his gun, and he tries to fire at Grandpa Jack because he's pissed. He doesn't want to lose all of the money that's on the table. And when he shot, he misses Grandpa Jack, and he kills his wife. And like my great grandmother was still around at the time that I wrote that, so, and Grandpa Jack, he gets up and he murders this man in cold blood because he killed his wife. And because of that situation, in the song, he is now working on the railroads, not as a railroad worker, but as someone who's in jail working on the railroads, right? Like he's got his orange jumpsuit on, he's got his hammer, and he's thinking, that son of a bitch, I would do it again in a heartbeat, one heartbeat. If that man ever, like, if he still lived, I would kill him, you know? And that's just an imaginary tale that came from my great grandpa Jack. So that's 4 aces, and so movies is just kind of the idea of like, it's just kind of like, okay, so I'm doing this music thing, you know, like I'm doing the music thing. I've got music tattoos all over my body, right? Because I'm passionate about this thing, right? This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm doing. This is my life. This is the trajectory that I'm going down as music, right? But if I wasn't going down this trajectory, and I do think about this a lot, right? I think about trying to place myself in other people's shoes, right? And it's just like, if I wasn't in this situation where I was so involved in music, I probably wouldn't have tattoos on all over myself that are music related. Instead, what I might have is a clean slate where I can do anything that I want. And then I put myself in the situation of like, maybe I could be an actor, right? Like, what would that look like? So I was kind of just thinking like, you know, what would I do? Where would I be? I'd probably be in LA. You know, I'd probably be hanging out in these crazy places. Like maybe like my career launches and I get to meet these people like Billy Joel, or I go and I get my hands like pushed into the concrete, right? Like that's what movie is about. Is it's just kind of like this other path that could have happened. You know, I could have gone down that, and I could have been. Well, I mean, I don't want to say I could have been, but like, it's just like what might have been to all of our lives, right? Where could that have gone? But I'll never know, right? Because this is the path that I'm on. Is I'll never know, and that's in the song where it's just kind of like, it'd be neat to see, but I'll never know. It can still happen, boy. No, I don't think I just don't, because I'm putting all of my energy into this. This is what I want to do, right? This is what I love doing, is the music. And so it's just like, if I did have that opportunity where it's like, hey, let's make you a famous actor, I don't know, but we'll see. We'll never know. You know, like, life might take us there. Okay, so that's how movies came to be. Two Sides is an interesting one, where I had just been over to a friend's house, and I had seen this guy that was the boyfriend of one of my friends sitting on the couch, and he was playing Xbox, and I was talking to her, and she was telling me that she was just like, he's just like, he sits there all day long. I really wish he would get up and do things. You know, like, we were having this conversation, and then and I thought about that a lot. I went back home. I was sitting about there, and you know, so this came from not my experience, but an experience that I saw, and then I was like, I wanna see if I can figure out what's going on there, right? And so I tried to put myself in both of their shoes, right? I was like, what can I see this from both of their angles, right? So I'm looking at it from the girl's point of view. In the song, she's talking to her mom, right? And she's going like, "Oh man, he's just so lazy. He's just playing video games all day. He's, you know, like, I want him to go out and get a job, but he hasn't even been looking, you know, that kind of thing." And then at the exact same time that conversation is going on, he's having another conversation with his friend in a pub. And he's got they both have beers, and they're hanging out there, and the guy, he's going, "Man, she just doesn't get it. Like, I mean, I worked my ass off. I imagine this guy is a laborer, right? Someone that really put in a lot of time into making money through the trades, right? And he's just like, I've beat up my body. I can't do it anymore. You know, like, I am, my body is broken, and I just want to rest, and I just want to take it easy, and I just want to play like games for a while, you know? And so that's what he's saying to his friend, right? And so they're bitching and complaining on both sides to these two different people, but at the end of it, and this is the important part. This is the important part of that song of two sides, is that there is love at the end, right? There's love at the end of these two people's journey, right? It's just like, this and this and this and this, but I love them, and then same thing with the girl side of things, just but I love her, right? Kind of thing. So that's what Two Sides is about, and I feel like it's like a kind of a snapshot of a real situation, right? And it's the thing that I was thinking about a lot when I was writing that song is it's not their fault. It's not their fault. They're in that situation, right? They're just doing the best that they can, right? They're in that situation because of elements that are outside of their control, and they're still trying to be good humans, right? But it's just the game is not the easiest game to play, right? And when I say the game, I'm just talking about like the environmental conditions that we find ourselves in with this stupid game called money. It's such a ridiculous, greedy, grubby kind of. Yeah, life is hard. Life is hard. It's not an easy path. And my first band was called The Death of Money, because I do look at it like, man, this is not an easy thing. Okay, so the only time I ever saw my parents fight, by the way, was about money. That really made an impact on me too, right? Because it's your first experiences that cause a whole chain reaction in your life. And when I was a kid and I saw my parents fighting, what ended up happening is that created a trigger for me, much like spiders, but it created a trigger for me that when I had one of my first girlfriends and we were talking, there was this point that she brought up money in the conversation, and I snapped. I don't know what happened there, but I yelled and I walked out of that house because I was just like, this is not, like, I can't deal with this. And then I started walking, and I was just like, I need to go for a huge walk, vent this all out, right? And as I was walking, I was thinking to myself, where's that from? Why did I'm not an angry person, as some of you might be able to pick up. I don't have like a lot of anger in my life because music really settles me down. But that was a trigger that really hit me deep, and that was because that was one of those emotional traumas of seeing my parents argue over money, which was linked to me, right? Like they were arguing over how much my equipment cost them to be in karate, and they didn't know I was listening. But that's what happened when I was a kid, is that money situation was linked to me, and they were fighting over something that I thought that I had caused, So, yeah, okay. So that's kind of like a little bit of a side note. Thank you so much for listening to my crazy ramblings. Okay, so we're gonna keep going on. Lions is kind of an interesting one because it comes from two different angles, right? It's not just one idea. Like I try to make my songs about one idea, right? But this is kind of two ideas. It came from two different inspirations, and they kind of meshed together. One of those inspirations came from that Fiddler that I mentioned. And what happened with Mac is that whenever I was hanging out with Mac, it was almost like I became an invisible human being, where the people that we were surrounding, the people that were surrounding me and this amazing Fiddler, just gravitated towards him as soon as he was there. Like when he wasn't there, everything. I don't want to say like things changed, but they did change. Like it was kind of like normally when I'm hanging out with someone one-on-one, right, where I'm telling stories, we're having great conversation, that kind of thing. But whenever I was hanging out with Mac, it was just like always just like trying to get Mac's attention and trying to get his approval and trying to like and that kind of thing. And he had just like the best things to say at the best times, and so he had this confidence, and he has this way with people. And so the idea of Lion during the chorus, anyways, was it was just kind of like, how can I be as much of an individual as you are? And that was kind of the idea behind the lyrics in the chorus, anyways. Where it's just like, how can I be that? How can I be that human that has that much draw? But I'm me, right? I'm me, so I can't be him, right? But how can I be something like that, right? There was just this kind of admiration that was for him through those lyrics for the chorus, anyways. And then the other parts of it, whereas like the verse or whatever. I'll try. This one actually might be an interesting one to look at the lyrics and to kind of go through to see if I can tell you the connections that I made in my mind with this one, because it's a weird one. Okay, so we got movies. Oh my god, I'm so looking forward to a new iPad. This one is so rough. Okay, Lion. Okay, here we go. So, if you are the flower, then I am the pavement, right? So, if you are beauty, I am this thing that kind of squashes that beauty. If you are the water, then I want to taste it, right? It's just kind of like, you are this, like, you have something there, and I want to absorb what it is that you have, right? And that's kind of like related to Otherside as well. If you are a lion, then I am the hunger. So it's just kind of like, I have that desire to have what you have, right? If you are the human, then I am desire. The same kind of a thing. I guess that's kind of what it's talking about. But if you are the music, then I am a craving. If you are a surgeon, well, I'll keep you waiting. That one's an interesting one. I don't exactly know what the connection was there. If you are a surgeon, well, I'll keep you waiting. If you are a liar, I saw the cover. If you are a family, then I am your lover. They're just kind of interesting connections that was made while it was being written. And I guess you can. It kind of comes with a little bit of a vagueness too, where it's like there is a connection, there is a line that's drawn between the two, but it's not a complete connection. Okay. So we'll keep going. Amigo is just a fun song. Like, honestly, it doesn't have too much of a story behind it. It's just kind of like, man, did I ever love hanging out with my friends and drinking and just having just shits and giggles and just doing just having a blast, right? That's kind of what Amigo is about. And I do really think that Amigo comes from Red Hot Chili Peppers, because they have like silly things that when you're listening to the lyrics, they're just like, it doesn't quite make like a metaphor or anything. It's just they're just having fun with words, and that's what I wanted to do with that song. Was it just like, I just wanted to have fun with words. So Amigo is that, and it's just kind of like friends having fun, positive energy, right? That's what that one's about. Blessed by a Curse was I was dating a girl for 2 weeks, and we were having such a good relationship. I get that. Amigo is my least favorite. I get that. Because it doesn't have a lot of substance to it, but it's just a fun song that I like. Okay, so Blessed by a Curse, I was dating this girl for 2 weeks, and then what ended up happening is that our relationship was going really, really well, and we were having so much fun getting to know each other, and I was like, this girl, I could see myself being with this girl forever. And then what ended up happening is she's 2 weeks in, she said, hey, listen, my ex-boyfriend is flying here from Ottawa, and I promised him that we could go on a hiking / camping trip before we started dating. And I really do think that this would be a good way for me to close off that relationship. And she said, is that okay with you? And I said, go for it. just like I was just saying, like, if that's what you feel like you need to do, then you got to go and do that. And she went on this camping trip with him. And of course, what ended up happening is she came back and she said, I got to choose. I got to choose between the two of you because he is going to move here. And I said, okay, what do you like? What is your decision? And she said, give me a little while and I will come to a decision. And that's when I wrote Blessed by a Curse, because I felt like I really wanted to get to know this girl. And and her ex-boyfriend ended up moving back, and I said good luck to them. Like, it's just like, hey, you know what? Let's hope it works. Let's hope it works for you. And they're still together, and it's been years, and I couldn't be happier for them. Like, it's like, great. If you find a partner and that works for you, that's that's all you can hope for. Really, is a great situation for them. And so that's Blessed by a Curse, and it's life, right? And it's great that these songs come out of these moments in my life where maybe it's not the most, what is the word that I'm looking for? I mean, it's got a bit of tragedy in there, right? But it's also life. And so when I can try and bring the listener, the audience into that moment where it's just like, let's just be human, and let's talk about the emotions of being in pain, and also like being like letting go of someone for love, where it's just like, I love her so much that I just want nothing but the best for her and her life and her partner, and that's really, important for me anyways. So Blessed by a Curse, that's what happened with that. Momento Mori. Momento Mori is, I just kind of had this image of this man that was living. There's not really anything that triggered it. I think it was just I was playing around with the music of it, and then this story kind of started to build in my head, where it was like this man that was in his coffin, right? That had been lowered into the ground, that was there for a good long while. He's been laying in his coffin for a good long while. And what ends up happening with him is he's reflecting on his life, and he's thinking about all his regrets because he can't leave. He can't leave. That's what's happening with him, is that he died, but he can't leave because he can't forgive himself. And he can't forgive what happened within his life and his regrets. And because he's holding on to those regrets, that's why he's there. And that's why he's in this wooden cage underneath the ground. So he's like, it's just from that perspective of that man that's not able to move, that's not able to do things, that's looking back at his life, going just like, oh man, I just want to be able to move my mouth again. I just want to be able to shout and scream. I want to be able to, like, that's probably the biggest thing, is just howling. Yeah, it's just wanting to let it go, right? So that's Momento Mori, and then If Trees Could Talk, there was just this one hike that I was having. I was walking around the Souk potholes, which is close to Victoria, and it's just a gorgeous walk. And I'm walking around there, and I see this tree, and it's this old, mangled, broken down tree. And I walk up to this tree, and I give it the biggest hug, because when I was looking at this tree, I was going, whoa, what have you gone through, right? Like, when I was looking at this tree, it was like it you could see that it had been struck by lightning. You could see that, like, part of it was like ripped off. Like, it was just like, this tree had gone through so much, right? And you could see, and it was old. It was an old tree that was just wrecked. And it was like, man, what you have seen over the course of your tree lifestyle, you know? And it was just that tree that I was just kind of like, I need to see if I can tell this tree's story, because that what is a unique being, you know? And how can I do that without calling it a tree, right? Like that's kind of what like I just wanted to take away that label and try to get its essence, and I don't know how to do that, but like, you know, maybe through music we can get there we can get closer to it, right? So that's if trees could talk. So we've gone through all of the recorded stuff. Is there any Pancakes? Pancakes was actually written about. So you remember how I was telling this story of Moonlight, when you know you're looking down and you're trying to reach out and touch that person but you can't, right? Pancakes was written about the relationship that happened before I was cut off by her father, which is kind of crazy, but that's where the inspiration came from. I put myself back into those shoes of my younger self, being in this relationship with this lady, and telling her how much I enjoy her company, and yeah, I wrote Pancakes when I met you guys, but it was still bringing myself back into those shoes, and coming from that side of like what is a happy. Yeah, I talked to her. Yeah, and I'm happy. I'm stoked for her. She's you know, she's living in Vancouver with her partner, and she's having a great life. And I'm you know, again, really excited for her as well. Right? Like, I'm glad that she found a partner that's working for her, and I'm happy that she's having great experiences, and you know, we still keep in touch and we're friends, right? But yeah, so that's where the inspiration of Pancakes came from anyways. So Stranger in the Mirror. Let me just look at that. I need confirmation before desperation. So the first part of that, I need confirmation before desperation erases my discretions. I'm stuck between realities. That was, I was in that place with the drinking problem, and so that was talking about that, where it's like, you know, I'm stuck between realities. I'm stuck between being okay and not being okay. And I'm feeling slipping traction, defining new reactions. I don't recognize the stranger in the mirror staring back at me, right? So I'm not. It's like I'm not. I'm just not recognizing this person that's here at this minute, right? Like, I'm looking at myself and my eyes. I've got these crazy bags under my eyes, and I'm like, and I'm really having a hard go this week. You know, that's when I was writing the song. That was just like a really hard week, and then it was like, I need to find that bridge, right? I need to find that road that will lead me back to where I see myself as. You know, connects my past to this, to remember the challenges of where I come from, right? Like these things, these challenges that you face that build you into the character that you are, and then all of a sudden you fall. You fall, and you have this heavy fall that happens at one point, and you just need to find that connection to your older self, you know. Shadows behind me, shout carry on, right? The shadows, so it's like the shadows of yourself, right? It's like the shadows are your past selves telling you, right? Saying carry on, move along, right? Like, just like keep going, right? Like, don't stop now, right? It's coming from your past self when you were in your strong place. The poison won't find me, right? The poison of your situation. Mistakes don't define me, right? That's just really important. Just don't let your mistakes define you, right? Keep moving, and they simply remind you to carry on, right? So that's Stranger in the Mirror. Move along. Just move along. Earthquake. Earthquake was inspired by, I was living in the bus at the time, and when I would go to bed every night, I would lay down in my bus and I could feel the earth slightly shaking underneath me almost every night, where I could feel the vibrations of the earth because it's right on a fault line. Victoria is right on the fault line. And so you, like, more than any other place that I've been, when I'm laying in bed, you can feel the earth just slightly shaking underneath you. Like when I went back to my parents' house and I was sleeping in the bed, I was actually kind of like startled at, like, while I was laying in bed, I was like, I don't feel the earth moving at all. And this is weird because I've had 6 years of the earth vibrating underneath me, right? And so that's kind of where earthquake comes from, where I could feel those vibrations like kind of shaking underneath me, and I was thinking, like, what would happen if I wasn't in this bus, but if I was in a building instead, and all of a sudden the building started collapsing around me, and I needed to get out, and there's, you know, and the story is like I'm in the room in this apartment building, and this guy rushes in and he's just like, leave your shit, like, we need the radio, grab the radio, we're running out the door, right? We're running down the stairs. And, you know, things are collapsing around us as we're running down these stairs, and, you know, we make it all the way down to the bottom, and we break open the doors, and as we break open the doors, there's just sunlight, and everything just, like, kind of calms down, right? And so that's what happens. That's where earthquake comes from. Like these like a lot of these stories is just kind of like these stories that just kind of happen in the mind's eye, and I try to see if I can take in as many senses as I can and try to pull you into the story. I think that's kind of what I try to do with my songs. So let's see here. Further from the truth, I don't know. Drunk on Pride. Drunk on Pride is a really interesting one because I started to write this one back in the same time when I was living in Vancouver. So that was like back in 2014, 2015 or something like that. So Drunk on Pride started there, but it didn't finish there. And okay, my iPad just died. But that's okay. So what ended up happening? Oh goodness sakes! I just kind of lost my train of thought when that happened. Drunk on Pride. Okay, so it started the song started with. Oh, I'm having a hard time without being able to look at the lyrics. Terribly sorry. It's too bad that just died like that. I wonder if I can find my. Yeah, I really, really wish that I could. Let me just see if I can find that little battery thing that I got going on here. It'll be really nice when I go back to Canada so that all of my plugins are the proper outlet. While I've been living here, I've been running all of my stuff off of all of these converters and everything like that. It makes it very tricky, and that's the reason why there might be a little bit of sound in the background. I just bought a brand new iPad Air. Okay. So, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there, and I just need to remember what song was I even talking about? Does anyone remember? Oh, right. Okay, so the Drunk on Pride. What ended up happening with that is if you're looking at Drunk on Pride, the second verse was actually the first verse that was written, and what happened with Drunk on Pride is it's the idea of if people. It's from the perspective. Okay, I like to do this sometimes. Like with Through the Tides, you know, I'm writing it from the boat's perspective, but with Drunk on Pride, where I'm writing it from is the perspective of Ash, right? I'm writing it from the perspective of like a canister of ash, like human remains, you know. And so someone dies, they get cremated, they get put into the ash, and then it gets spread. It gets spread on the ocean, right? And so the lyrics are talking about it from the perspective of this ash that's moving through the waves, and it's moving in through different areas, right? And so that's kind of what Drunk on Pride. That's what inspired the start of that, anyways. And then the first verse is a different type of scenario where it's looking at a sunken ship, right? And you're at the perspective of the sunken ship, and what you see is this ship is completely still, and now there's fish living in it, and now there's like it's become this breeding ground for all of this nature to build around, right? So this war machine is now in total peace, right? It's totally serene, but at one point it was a war machine, right? And you go into this sunken boat, and like almost like a scuba diver, right? And you go into this sunken boat, and as you make your way into it, you can see a small wooden eye that's left over from this man who died. And the man who died was the captain of a ship who sunk with the ship. So what happens is cannon, bam, hits the ship, right? The captain realizes that the ship's going down. He's going down with it. And he goes to the big barrel of wine, and he starts drinking. And he's just like, fuck it all. I'm going down with this thing. And he is just getting sloshed. And then, years later, you see the wooden eye. So that's kind of the story of the Drunk on Pride. Anyways, and so it's like long after they lost their name, right? Like both verses are looking at if you're looking at it from the perspective of this dead captain, or if you're looking at it from the perspective of Ash, it's still just long after they've lost their name, right? Like long after they've disappeared from this earth, they're still kind of lingering, So Further from the Truth. Thanks so much for being here on the stream, by the way. Really appreciate you listening to the stories of how these songs came to be. It looks like someone might be at the door. I'm just going to see who it is. 1 second. Oh, no, it's okay. It's all right. You can make noise and whatever. Okay, so let's go back to, let's say, Further from the Truth. So this is just kind of going back to my child. Okay, so when I was a kid, I had this dream, right? And I remember this dream very vividly. And what happened? I'm just gonna shut my door. So I'm bugging them a little bit less. But what ended up happening is there was a fireplace that I would end up in my dreams, right? And I remember being there many, many times. And what would happen is I would stand, and it was the basement it was the fireplace that was actually downstairs, right? So I go to sleep, and I wake up in a dream next to the mantle that's downstairs in the same house that I'm living in. I don't know what happened with my dreams, but I would constantly be in the house that I was living in, like as a dream-like entity or whatever. Like maybe astral projection. I don't know. When I was a kid, I might have been doing that a lot, but I would walk up to this fireplace, and I would go into the fireplace that no longer worked. This was not a working fireplace. And then I would just fall. And that's what the dream was, is I would just be falling for a really, really long time. And so that mixed with the a fireplace that was a part of my grandmother's house. There was another fireplace that was down in her place that I kind of pulled inspiration from both of those mantles, both of those things, right? So at my grandma's place, it was boarded up. And I would try to peek through the cracks, and I could smell, I just like the song says, I could smell the ash on the other side. And it was just kind of like that was a fire that worked at some point, So that's what it's talking about, is these two different fireplaces that was a part of my childhood, that I have these weird, strange memories of. And then so there was a room when I was young where I would keep books. Oh yeah, so this is the new verse, and there was this small tiny room that I hadn't actually thought about since I lived in that house. But when I was writing this song, I was like, whoa, I remember that room. So there was a room that was underneath the stairs, right? It was a very small room. And I remember this small room being like my little room where as a small child, I fit in that room, And so like, the lyrics are, there was a room when I was small, where I would keep books, where I would read alone. Those pages had a lot to say. They brought me into other worlds, right? So this is when I was just a kid, and all of a sudden, every page, you flip a page, and you're just like, whoa, my mind has just been blown again, right? You flip another page, and you're like, Jesus, that's part of the world too, right? And so in that small room underneath the stairs, I had some books where I was just, my mind was just being blown over and over and over again about the world and what potentials, it could happen in the future just by looking at, like, say, an atlas, where I was looking at an atlas and just being like, the world is so large, that blew my mind. Here I was thinking it was just the size of my neighborhood, but all of a sudden it's just like, oh my God, the world is massive, and look at all these countries, and so that's what that song is about. It's just like trying to bring myself back into that room and see that fireplace as well. They were very close to one another. The room and the fireplace were in the same general vicinity. You could look across the room and see the room, or look across the room and see the mantle, right? Let's see here. Is there any other ones that you guys would really like to hear about in particular? Rattle Your Cage. I'm trying to think of Rattle Your Cage. Rattle Your Cage really doesn't have like a great story attached to it, but there is something that comes to mind when I am thinking of it. Because it's circus related, and I was really trying to get a circus vibe. So what needs a new name? Please, for the love of God, rename it. I'm confused. Circus related. Okay. All right. I'll keep going into this. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Okay, so with Rattle Your Cage, I really wanted to not... Okay, Rattle Your Cage just doesn't do it justice. Well, I guess I could call it Crazy Song. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. We'll figure it out, because it's still a work in progress, and it hasn't been officially named yet. Like, when it goes onto the album, that's when it gets named, But, okay, so... Elephants. When elephants are getting trained, when elephants are babies, what ends up happening with them is that they start training elephants with very large chains. They take these really large chains and they chain it to the bottom foot of an elephant, right? And then they attach that to a very big pole that's wedged very far in the ground, right? And so what happens is these baby elephants, they try to get away, but they're not able to because of these giant chains that's on one of the, the back leg of this elephant, right? Now, as the elephants get older, what happens is that the chain becomes less and less thick, right? So like I'm not saying this is a good thing, right? I'm not saying this is a good thing, but this is how they train those elephants for the circus, right? And so the big chains become smaller and smaller and smaller as they get older because they it's been programmed into them that they can't escape when this thing is around their leg, right? Now, when they get into their like early adult life of being an elephant, they've had this thing wrapped around their leg the entire time, right? And what happens is now they don't even need a chain. All they need is a piece of rope, right? They can have pieces, and then instead of attaching a piece of rope to a piece of metal or a peg or something like that, instead what they'll do is they'll take the piece of rope and attach it from one of their legs to another elephant, right? So, and that will keep them in place. And even if this did happen where a tent, a circus tent, caught on fire, and those elephants could have easily escaped, but because the mental chain of that piece of rope that was attached from elephant to elephant was keeping them there, they weren't able to run because of the mental constraint. And so the reason why I want to tell you that story is because even though the situation has changed in your environment, in your setting, right? Like they could easily break out of that, even though the environment has changed. You've got those past things that kind of hold you back, right? So try new things. Like try new things, and you might be surprised. Try things that you think you're tethered by, but try that and see if the situation has changed for you, because it might have, and that goes back to like the monkeys in a cage, which is another story where monkeys, what they'll do is, okay, so this was an experiment where they had 5 monkeys in a cage, right? So they have 5 monkeys in a cage, and they have a stairwell that's in the cage, and there is a banana hanging at the top of the stairwell. And what happens is there's the 5 monkeys. What are they going to do, right? They see the banana, they want the banana, they walk up the stairs, they try to get at the banana. When they walk on the stairs, what happens is that they all get sprayed with really cold water, right? So first monkey goes up, tries to grab the banana, they all get sprayed with really cold water. They quickly learn that it's like, you try to go for the banana, get sprayed. Second monkey tries it at some point, they all get sprayed. After a while, they realize you don't go for that banana, right? Like we all get sprayed. So what happens at that point, once they've all learned that you can't go for the banana, is the switch that activates the water gets turned off, right? That water gets turned off, and then one of the monkeys gets taken out, and then a new monkey gets put into the cage, right? Now, what's this monkey gonna do? Right? The monkey is going to go for that banana, right? And because that's what makes sense. And so monkey is going for the banana, but the 4 other monkeys will not want that monkey to do it because they'll know they'll get sprayed with water, so they'll attack that monkey. Right? Now, and then what ends up happening is after a while, that one monkey is realizing, okay, I don't go for the banana because I'll get attacked by the other 4 monkeys, right? Now, you slowly, over the course of time, take out... Oh, so this is important, too. Once you take out one of those 4 monkeys, one of the 4 original monkeys, and you put in a new monkey, what ends up happening is that new monkey will want to go for the banana. Now, not only does the 3 monkeys that were in there go for that one monkey, like to make sure that they don't get sprayed by the water, but there's the other monkey that's a new monkey that will actually attack that new monkey because he wants to be part of the group, because he wants to be part of what the other 3 are doing. You see? So the situation has changed dramatically at this point, right? Where there's the 3 monkeys, the original monkeys, and the 2 no monkeys, right? But they've all learned in different ways. Don't go for the banana. You take out the two. You take out the rest. Those other three monkeys, and you. And then you replace those three monkeys slowly over the course of time with new monkeys, and the attack thing happens and whatever. And then what happens is you've got 5 new monkeys that are in the cage with this banana, with the stairs, that don't do anything. Like, they walk on the stairs, they're not going to get sprayed with water, but they've all learned that you don't go for the banana, right? So that's another analogy where it's like the situation has changed dramatically, but they won't go for it. And another story that goes along the same lines as this one is that when I was a kid, there was a situation that happened where my mom had a big ham, right? She had this big ham and she was cooking it, and she took this large knife and she started cutting off the end of the ham, and then she cut off the other side of the ham. And then she started putting it into the oven. And I go, like, Mom, why do you cut off both ends of the ham before you put it into the oven? And she goes, well, the reason why I do that is because my mother used to do that, right? And so the next time I saw my mom's mom, I asked her, I was like, Grandma, why do you cut off the sides of the ham? And she went, oh, well, that's because my mother used to do that. And so my great-grandmother was still alive at the time, and we went to my great-grandmother and we said, so why do you cut the sides off the ham? And my great-grandmother was very confused. And she went, you do that? The only reason why I did that is because our oven couldn't fit the ham. It was such a small oven that she had to cut the sides off so that it would fit into the oven. But then my grandmother ended up doing that all throughout the course of her life, and then my mother ended up doing that over the course of her life. So in the same way as the monkeys and all of this stuff, it's like the situation has changed dramatically. Dramatically, right? Bigger ovens, whatever. But they're still doing the same thing that they've always done, right? So those are just some interesting stories that are kind of a side story, where I think it was that the one with the circus, kind of like with the elephants, that kind of inspired that craziness in me. But yeah, learned behaviors for sure, right? Yeah. So is there any other ones that we haven't done that you guys want to hear about? My iPad died, so I can't look at. Silent Alarm is it was just, I was imagining there was just like a kind of a story that was going on in my head where I was imagining that it was kind of a post-apocalyptic world, if you're looking at it, like what the image looked like. And the post-apocalyptic kind of situation was there was this camera, and it's monitoring you. And in that way, I was thinking about Big Brother, right? I was thinking about like, this constant surveillance state that we're under. And I was linking it with that, where it's just like, there's a silent alarm that's going off in our society, where it's like, there is something wrong here. There is something majorly wrong. And then in the second chorus, it's talking about how prophets are taking their paint, and they're painting these symbols of where we should be going. That's kind of the basic kind of thing of Silent Alarm. Like I wish I had the lyrics in front of me so I could kind of go through it a little bit more, in a little bit more depth. So I know someone's asking me about Calamity. And I was wondering, my iPad has died completely. Oh, you know what? I can just pull it up on my phone. Now that I think about it. Thanks so much for being here, you guys. And we'll probably, I don't know, we'll probably call it here rather soon. It's been it's been almost 2 hours of me talking, and it's yeah. Thanks. Maybe hopefully this gives you a bigger understanding of the work. And does anyone have their pirate outfits picked out yet? Yeah. Oh, for sure. Okay, so Calamity. I put the commentary in the lyrics because I figure what I'm going to start doing is putting commentary into it so that people can kind of get an idea of what it's about. But basically, so what I wrote here is, so the first part is talking about our phones up until commonality. So when we're reading this, right, it's a ball and chain. It's a little company. It's a suit in a cage with a touch of apathy. It's a brand new way to lose your reality. It's a brand new fault line in commonality. So that part right there is talking about our phones, where it is like this ball and chain, right? And it is this touch of apathy. Apathy, I love the word apathy, where it just doesn't care about you, right? The phone doesn't care about you, but we spend so much time with it. It's a brand new way to lose your reality, right? It's a brand new fault line in commonality, right? In our common life. In our common lives, there's just this fault that's taken, that's taken over, and that is our devices. It's kind of even hard to remember what life looks like without all of these devices all the time. And then the next part of this is talking about something super interesting, where I love the work of Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock. I don't know if you guys know about them, but they are amazing, and their work on research is unbelievable. And what they talk about is that there was an asteroidal asteroidal impact that happened in Greenland close to 13,000 years ago, 13,200 to 13,400 years ago, or something like that. And what happened is when this when this asteroid hit Greenland, it created this giant wave that went over the entire Earth. Like, they can see where the asteroid hit from imaging, like technology, radio waves and all that kind of stuff. So they can see how big this impact was, and when it hit, it caused a massive wave to go across the entire world, but it didn't reach to Australia, and it didn't reach to Africa. So if you look at Africa or if you look at Australia, you'll find that so many of the marsupials that are down there, I don't know if that's the right word, it's just like the mammals, the animals, the bugs, they're bigger. They're bigger megafauna. Maybe that's the right word. But they're bigger animals that are on these two continents because the wave from this asteroidal impact didn't reach those two continents, right? So it kind of left that evolution alone a little bit, and that's why there's bigger animals there. Okay, so this flood goes across the entire world, right? And what happens with this giant flood 13,000 years ago is we can see how crazy fast this water pushed across the continents by looking at the bones of the animals that were around at that time, the megafauna, right? The very big, large animals. And what the big, large animal was that was around at the time that you can look at is the what is the word? It's the what is that thing called? It's got tusks. It's a giant mammal. It's got like starts with an M, I think. It's like an elephant. Mammoth, that's the one. Okay, so you're looking at mammoth bones, right? And from mammoth bones, you can see that when this water was coming across, it would hit those mammoths' feet, and with such an impact that it completely shattered all of the bones that were in their legs. Right? The water that was just rushing over the continent, just like, and just broke all of their legs, right? Because that's the force of this water. Now, the water was when it froze, because there was a miniature ice age. So the water goes across the world, and then everything freezes because there's a miniature ice age. And when this ice age happens for about 250 to 300 years, the ice was 3 miles high, right? It's like 2 miles, 3 miles high, right? Now, if you're looking at North America, you can notice that in the middle of North America, there's this completely flat area that's right in the middle of North America, right? Like there's British Columbia on the one side, right? And then there's more mountains on the other side, right? But like in the middle, why is it so flat? Why is it so flat, right? Why is it so like Alberta's just like bleh, just flat as far as you can friggin' see. Now, what happened is that the water that was frozen, that was 3 miles high, when it started to melt, it started to slide across the continent. And when it was sliding across the continent, it was flattening the Earth, right? All of this water from this giant asteroidal impact was just flattening the Earth as it was making its way across the continent. And what was really interesting about that too is like when it melted, it left behind these giant boulders, just like in just random places throughout North America, in the middle, in the flatlands, right? Because it would melt, and then it would leave these giant boulders, and you're like, how the fuck did this boulder get here, right? But it's because it carried those boulders, and like in the frozen ice, and then just dropped it off. Because you'll find these boulders that's just like this doesn't belong here. This belongs like way up there, but it's like got moved, right? And what's really interesting about this too is like if you're ever flying over North America is a really good place to see this event happening. When you're looking at a beach, when you're on a beach, you can see those tiny ripples, right? Like the tiny ripples of water, because the water's coming up and then it goes down. And as it's doing this up and down motion, it's leaving behind these ripples, right? Now, you're looking at that on a small scale. You're looking at these ripples on a small scale. Now explode them, make them way bigger. And when you're flying over North America, you'll see these ripples in the land, right? And what those ripples are, because I'm sure like while you've been flying, have you seen those ripples? What's the ripples? Well, the ripples come from the massive 2 to 3 mile high water that was coming and doing that whole thing where I was going back and forth and creating these massive bubbles in the land, right? So that's what Calamity is about in the second part of the verse, where, you know, it's a wave 2 miles high, crushing bones while taking lives, right? Crushing bones of the megafauna. It's a freeze you can't escape because there's the Ice Age, and the haunting memories of a grander history, because it's a history that we can't see, right? It's a history that we don't know what the technology that was around there. If the same thing happened today, so much of our civilization would be wiped out, and so we can't really know what that history was back then, what humans looked like back then, because it was just the survivors that made it through that we're the offspring of. Maybe we weren't meant to see towers in the dirt. Towers in the dirt refers to the Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is an architectural place that was it's a what's the term? Göbekli Tepe is it's a place that is underground, and it was purposely buried. And it is a giant structure that's buried underground, and it was purposely buried too. Anyways, Göbekli Tepe is really interesting. So that's the last part of that verse is talking about towers in the ground, secrets and chimneys, which is just kind of like looking at towers that were inside the ground. I'm beside of mirror of me, and then when it's saying I'm beside of mirror of me, right? I'm just like I'm looking at myself, but in this other realm where it's like, what would it look like if I was living in through that period of like the flood, or like, you know, and say I'm a survivor of this flood, say I'm a survivor of you know, after an ice age or during an ice age or whatever. So I'm looking in this mirror and I look the same, yet I have crooked teeth, right? I don't have the same structure that I have that's around me. It's a different time of life, it seems, that scraped through the dirt to survive after calamity. It's a wash, a strip of me, right? So it's like the identity that I have now is completely different, right? It's a wash. all of this has been washed away, right? A strip of me, a different name, a different scene, right? With fangs I've never worn before. So I'm looking in this mirror, and this person that I'm seeing has like these fangs that are just like, whoa, this is a vicious human being that has been through hell, right? But it's me, but it's on a different side, right? It's on a different parallel setting of what happened on the planet. You know, and then in the next verse, what it's talking about is it's like it's the calm far beneath. So what this is it's like what we are chasing, right? Or what it's like this peace that we are trying to attain, and that's what this part of the verse is. So it's the calm far beneath, turbulence of rapid seas. I'm just like thinking about like the deepness of the ocean. Also thinking about like when the waves came over, even when the waves, like after the waves passed over with the 3 mile high waves, even at the bottom of that water, it would have been very peaceful, even though it's so much turbulence, right? Taking breaks, pause and breathe, where everyone is frantically moving on, changing pace, never staying in one place for very long. You don't have to run this race. It's okay to stand aside and let the world pass you by. Things can change on a dime, just like it did for this imaginary person, right? You might not be prepared in time for the speed of consequence to plow into your radiant guise. And I love that word at the end, guise. Guise is like a disguise, right? It's like this persona that you've put onto yourself. But I just like, it's just kind of like I'm looking at myself and I'm going like, I have a guise of being a musician. I have a guise of being this identity that I define myself as when I'm looking at myself, right? But I could have been a completely different person. This is just kind of like I don't want to say a shell, but it's just kind of like it's been stamped onto me by my environment, by the situations that I've been around. It's been stamped onto me, and you look around yourself and you're like, this could have been, like that person could have been. I hope I'm making sense here. Where, you know, it's like it could just be a different timeline. It could be a different situation, and I could be the one that was in the hospital with 3rd-degree burns all over my body, right? Like you just don't know where you're gonna end up. With this crazy life that we got going on. All right. Let's see. Have we done? Is there anything else? Craving is pretty. I think craving is pretty self-explanatory. Where it's just like I'm hooked on cigarettes and I'm having a hard time. You know, long way from home is about where, you know, if our society wasn't so geared towards making money and doing and like kind of you know, trying to push forward with the idea of like unlimited growth and consumerism and all of that stuff, right? If we weren't into that, if our life wasn't so geared towards that, what would our life look like? And that's where I imagine home would be, you know, like that's, and so we are a long way from home, right? We're a long way from where we could be. We're a long way from where our society could look like, you know? So that's what that song is about. Faster than light. Let me look at that one. And then we've almost gone over all of them. You've held your sight fixed on building a device that could end all strife from being alone in the night. Okay, so this one, you've held your sight fixed on this is talking about our digital devices as well. You held your sight fixed on building a device that could end all the strife of being alone in the night, right? How many of us are checking our phones in the middle of the night, right? Trying to feel less alone. We're trying to bring other people into our lives because we feel like there's maybe a void, right? And so that's what that's talking about, where it's just like someone out there was just like, I really want to there's someone out there that was just like, I want this to be a commodity. I want human relationships to be a commodity. So I'm building a device so that I can capitalize on human relationships as a commodity, and that's what these are, right? We are the product. And some were so afraid of consequences it could have made. So this was before digital things was like so a part of our life, right? Where it's just like there was people that were looking at it going like, I don't think this is a good idea, right? But it's also talking about new technology too, right? It's talking about like things that are just like I don't know, like one comes to mind. It's like sex robots. Sex robots is a thing, and it's just kind of like, what will that do to society? What will that do to us as humans, being more and more integrated with the digital world around us, right? So someone was so afraid of consequences it could have made a force behind the crash, breaking everything that we had, right? So that's like this crash that just like hits the earth, hits our society, right? Though we can sail faster than light. So when it's saying though we can sail faster than light, I mean like surfing the web. That's what that's talking about. Though we can sail faster than light, though we can move through the internet faster than we can say something, right? Like this is amazing that we can even have this conversation right now where I'm talking and you are hearing me pretty much at the exact same time that I'm doing it. That's unreal. Though we can sail faster than light, we started flirting with imminent dangers, right? So we're flirting with things that we might not be able to withstand evolutionarily, if that's the right word, right? So it's a super ironic, right? Super ironic. But we're flirting with these imminent dangers, and it's not our fault because our society has evolved in this direction, right? So we're just along for this ride, and it's really hard. It's hard to hold on. It's hard to hold on because it's increasing at such a fast rate, right? Like, I mean, back when I was looking at this, technology was doubling every 6 months, and then technology was doubling every 3 months, and then technology was doubling every month, and then it was just doubling every second or whatever, and it's just kind of like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to hold on because it's just changing so rapidly. But yeah, we got to work it out. Got to figure it out. We were dead honest. We might see the source of heat. And when I'm talking about that, it's like it's our society is just structured so wrong, right? So like if that's where the heat is coming from, there's like this friction that's happening and it's creating this heat. We got to work it out. We got to figure it out. We've got bigger threats on the scene. Bigger threats on the scene. I'm referring to global warming, right? Like I'm referring to the collapse of so many different ecosystems, right? Should we speculate? Nah, let's concentrate, right? So it's just kind of like, should we stand around and just try to ponder the situation, or should we actually like take hold of what we can do as like what we can be responsible for, and actually concentrate those creative solutions so we can fix this fucking mess that we're in, and there's people around the world that are doing that, and like all the power to them. And this is what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to write music that might hopefully bring people out of maybe depression so that they can do something really productive with their lives, as far as who knows how that can help. Because I feel like music is like the best therapy there is, and if I can contribute to the therapy of someone else, then and help them, bring them out of the darkness, maybe we can come at the world with a more positive outlook. And if we can come at it with a positive outlook on a mass scale, then we can find solutions, and we can actually change the world into a something that's got just better positivity. It's good to inject positivity into the world because there's enough negativity. Okay, so we speculate. Now let's concentrate creative solutions for how we can thrive if we could emulate a cool reflective state. So it's just kind of like, let's not be so hot. Let's not be so heated. Let's try and settle down, and let's focus on how we can fix this mess, Let's point every compass towards a compassionate side. And yeah, so it's not our fault. We're just along for the ride. And that's faster than light. Um,